warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Om Swastiastu, salam kebajikan, Namo Buddhaya. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Selamat malam rekan-rekan yang baik yang sudah hadir dalam diskusi kita pada malam hari ini. Perkenalkan, saya Premita Fifi dari Kisah Perempuan Indonesia akan menjadi moderator pada malam hari ini. Malam ini seharusnya sahabat saya yang cantik Nadia Sarini yang menjadi moderator. Tapi buah hatinya sedang sakit dan Not harus standby menjaganya. Semoga Ananda Not segera sembuh, syafahullah. Amin. Rekan-rekan baik, judul diskusi kita pada malam hari ini adalah Menggali Argumen Fundamental Kebebasan Beragama dalam Tafsir Al-Qur'an. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Premita Fifi from Kisah Perempuan Indonesia. Welcome you to this discussion of Caknurian Urban Sufism. Our topics of the night will be exploring fundamental arguments for freedom of religion within the Tafsir of the Quran. Tonight, we will discuss about the book published by Mizan, which titled Freedom of Expression in Islam, challenging the laws of apostasy and blasphemy, specifically on the chapter about freedom of religion within the Tafsir of Qur'an. Malam ini kita akan membahas mengenai buku yang diterbitkan oleh Mizan yang berjudul Kebebasan Berekspresi dalam Islam, menggugat hukum kemurtatan dan penodaan agama, khususnya bab tentang kebebasan beragama dalam tafsir Al-Quran. Dan saat ini sudah hadir bersama kita para narasumber yang luar biasa. And now we are blessed with 3 esteemed speakers. First, Professor Omaima Abou-Bakr. Good evening, Prof. Omaima.
Good evening. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It's great pleasure to meet you here. Dan pembicara kedua, idola saya, perempuan hebat, Mbak Nina Nurmila. Mbak Nina, ketemu lagi kita.
Wah, senang sekali ketemu Mbak Fifi. Terima kasih undangannya. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dan tentunya guru kita bersama, penjaga marwah dari Caknurian Urban Sufism, sahabat saya yang baik, Profesor Dr. Komaruddin Hidayat. Hai Mas.
Halo Vi, makasih Vi, ketemu lagi.
Iya, lama banget nggak ketemu kita. Sebelum kita memulai diskusi ini, saya akan membacakan sedikit guidelines tentang diskusi ini. Yang pertama, mohon semua peserta menggunakan nama asli seperti yang digunakan pada saat pendaftaran. Yang kedua, mohon semua peserta mematikan audio selama diskusi berlangsung agar tidak terjadi kebisingan yang dapat mengganggu jalannya diskusi. Yang ketiga, pertanyaan dapat disampaikan melalui kolom chat atau dituliskan secara singkat dan jelas serta dijelaskan ditujukan kepada siapa. Dan yang terakhir, jika sudah dibuka sesi tanya jawab, admin dan host akan memberi kesempatan kepada beberapa peserta terpilih untuk bertanya secara langsung. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue with our discussion, I would like to read the short bios of our esteemed speakers. The first is Professor Omaima Abou-Bakr. She is the professor of English and Comparative Literature at Cairo University, founding members of the Women and Memory Forum in Egypt. She is also the researcher and member of the Musawah, knowledge building team, and also a founding member of Islamic Feminism Forum. Professor Omaima is specialized in medieval Sufi poetry and comparative topics in the medieval English and Arabic literature. She has published numerous articles in both English and Arabic on poetry and medieval literature texts, on historical representation of women in pre-modern Muslim scientists, women and gender in religious discourses, Islamic feminist issues, and Quranic Tafsir. Her most recent publications, The Egalitarian Principles of Peace as Life Ethics Toward a Liberationalization of Tafsir, published in 2023. And before that, Freedom of Religion in Quranic Exegesis, published in 2021. Welcome, Prof. Omaima.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our second speaker is Professor Nina Nurmila. She is the Dean of the Faculty of Education at Indonesian International Islamic University, or IIIU, since July 2021. Prof. Nina is also a lecturer in the Faculty of Education and Teacher Training in the State Islamic University, Sunan Gunung Jati, Bandung. She gained her full professorship in Islamic law in 2017. Her PhD on gender and Islamic studies was from University of Melbourne, while her master degree on gender and development was from Murdoch University in Western Australia in 1997. Mbak Nina is the author of Women, Islam, and Everyday Life, Renegotiating Polygamy in Indonesia, published on 2009 and 2011. Mbak Nina also wrote several articles on gender and Islam in the international journals and books. Thank you, Mbak Nina.
Sama-sama.
And last but not least, our third speaker and also the host of Caknurian Urban Sufism, Professor Dr. Komaruddin Hidayat. Mas Komar was the rector of the IIIU until 2023. Right now, he is the director of the Interfaith Institute of IIIU. He was also director of State Islamic University of Syarif Hidayatullah from 2006 until 2015. His latest books are Imajinasi Islam, sebuah rekonstruksi Islam masa depan, An Imagination of Islam, a reconstruction of future Islam, published in 2021, and Jalan Pulang, or The Way Home, published in 2023. Rekan-rekan yang baik, kita akan segera mulai diskusi kita. Kebebasan beragama merupakan salah satu hak azazi manusia. Bukan untuk kita mengambil hak itu, karena hak itu berasal langsung dari Tuhan. Ladies and gentlemen, the freedom of religion is one of the basic rights for human. It is not for us to take it, for it is derived directly from God the Almighty. Apapun agama yang kita pilih atau tidak kita pilih, harus dianggap sebagai pilihan pribadi kita dan dihormati oleh orang lain. Whatever religion we choose or not choose, any religion must be regarded as our personal choice, therefore respected by others. Dan sekarang, untuk memulai diskusi kita, saya akan meminta Profesor Komaruddin Hidayat untuk memberikan kata pembuka. And now, to start our discussion, I would like to ask Profesor Dr. Komaruddin Hidayat to give his opening remarks. Mas Komar, monggo.
Okay, thank you. Well, again, I would like to welcome Prof. Omaima, Prof. Nina, for joining us to share your wisdom and knowledge to our audiences. Well, allow me to introduction, and there is no moral values, no virtues without freedom. So all morality and virtues assume requires freedom. And in Quran, it is clearly stated, La ikraha fidin. no anyone can force us to embrace or not to embrace, because it's quite personal. At the end of the day, actually, religiosity is quite personal experiences. Saudara sekalian, bahwa freedom, kemerdekaan itu anugerah yang paling tinggi dari Tuhan, hak asasi kita yang tidak bisa dirampas oleh siapapun. Bahkan sejarah perjuangan individu, bangsa, kita catat adalah sejarah perjuangan kemerdekaan. Seperti Indonesia, bahkan Palestina sekarang, mereka struggling for freedom. Jadi kemerdekaan itu memang sangat fundamental. Ada setidaknya dua pengertian freedom ya. Yang pertama, it is a popular definition of freedom. What is freedom? To be free is to be unconstrained by rules of any kind. To be free, to be no rule, we can do what we want. But it is not the meaning of freedom according to the Quranic teaching. Freedom, kemerdekaan adalah orang yang hanya setia kepada kesadaran moral, pada kebaikan, kepada hal-hal yang datangkan manfaat pada orang lain, sehingga tidak bisa atas nama freedom to kemudian kita bisa merugikan, merampas hak orang lain. Dengan demikian, yang namanya freedom yang sejati adalah freedom from. The essential freedom is negative freedom, that is freedom from, not freedom to. Dalam Al-Quran disebutkan minal khauf wal ju'. Jadi we want to get freedom from what? From political and economical insecurity. Freedom. And actually, when we are embracing religion and performing many type of ritual in Islam, according to Islam, actually it's quite private. No one knows actually whether someone's doing salat or saum or zakat or any other ritual performance. We only know at the level of the outer performance, but the real, the substance, actually nobody knows. That's why in Islam, when we are obliged to perform, we have to first begin with niat, intention. In intention, we used to say nawaitu, not nawaina. Nawaitu saum, nawaitu sholah, nawaitu. And actually, when we say nawaitu, it's quite personal, inner choice that nobody knows. That's why actually, in terms of the physical freedom, we subject to the natural law, we are subject to political law, but at the level of inner freedom, freedom of thought, freedom of thinking, freedom of faith, freedom of religion, it is free from any constraint. And for the sake of getting freedom, even some people like Mandela, he get ready to come to the jail. Why? To defend his freedom, that is dignity. Like Socrates also, if we want to negotiate, if he did negotiate, compromise, he doesn't need to go to the jail. But it is freedom, it is fake freedom. The real freedom is freedom according to the moral principle. And in Islam, it is very highly well appreciated that the real freedom is freedom at the level of the moral and rational freedom. Therefore, I would like again to emphasize that there is no morality, no virtues without freedom. And that's why freedom is the very foundation of any human being as a rational being. And freedom is the prerequisite of any moral virtue. I think that's enough. I would like to listen. I cannot wait to listen the wisdom of Prof. Omaima and Nina. Thank you very much, Fi. Back to you.
Okay, Mas, thank you very much, Mas Komar. Terima kasih banyak for the great remarks. To underline what Mas Komar said is no morality or virtue without freedom. And by freedom, he means freedom from, not only freedom to. Kebebasan merupakan hak mendasar bagi semua manusia. Tidak ada moralitas maupun nilai-nilai tanpa kebebasan. Kebebasan yang dimaksud adalah kebebasan dari hal-hal yang tidak ingin kita lakukan atau ingin kita lakukan. Bukan hanya kebebasan untuk melakukan apa yang kita lakukan. Kurang lebih seperti itu ya, Mas?
Ya.
Baik, untuk pembicara kedua, saya akan meminta pembicara tamu kita, Profesor Omaima Abou-Bakr, untuk menyampaikan catatannya mengenai topik diskusi kita pada malam hari ini. And for the second speaker, I would like to ask Professor Omaima Abou-Bakr to deliver her notes concerning the topic of the night. Professor Omaima, the floor is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Hidayat, for a great introduction to the topic and for the remarks. Thank you for the invitation and for those who organized this event. I have a special fondness for Indonesia and Indonesian friends. So I'm always happy to participate in any activity or event with my Indonesian sisters and brothers. I would like to take just half a minute very quickly before I begin the presentation of my article to say that this is International Women's Day, and I would like to take that opportunity to salute Muslim sisters everywhere in the world and for their work and achievements everywhere. And this year, especially, to also present a salute and a dua for our Palestinian sisters, making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to praying to God to end their suffering and to reward them for their endurance and patience, and inshallah to achieve justice for them very soon. So now I can begin my presentation, and this is a summary of a chapter, as was by Premita noticed, is a summary of my chapter in the book Freedom of Expression in Islam. And I have some slides because there's a lot of very nice and interesting quotations from the Tafsir and from many Muslim intellectuals who dealt with this issue and with this verse in particular. So inshallah, I will share these slides. You can see the slides, right?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Maybe you can put it into a full screen.
Into this, I think this, what it's called. Okay, just a second. I need to. You mean the slideshow mode, right?
Yes,
This
yes.
is what it's called, so that it's clearer. Okay,
Yes.
is it clear now?
Yes.
All right. The goal of this paper was to trace the development of that concept of freedom to enter religion, freedom of faith, and the attitudes of, particularly in the literature of tafsir, in the literature of interpretation, not of course in jurisprudence, because jurisprudence is another branch of Islamic sciences, and there are many specifics about this idea of freedom of religion or the apostasy laws, or but I focused only on the literature of the tafsir, and I also focused on one particular ayah, or actually part of the verse. We're going to see that this is a very famous, as you know, very famous verse in Islam, La ikraha fi din, no coercion in religious belief. And the methodology was, it's called, the diachronic discourse analysis. In other words, I tried to follow the interpretation of that part of the verse, because the rest of the verse has also other concepts and notions that merit interpretation, but I try to follow the interpretation from classical times to modern, to 20th century, all the way to contemporary Muslim intellectuals and interpreters, and to follow the discourse, how it changed, how it developed, how it shifted, what kind of coercion different exegetes, understood, and it's directed to whom. Is the verse directed to people of the book, or also to the idolaters and infidels? And what is the relationship between this principle and the context of political and social reality? And how did the interpreters connect this verse to other verses? Because there are other verses in the Quran, by the way, that also promote freedom and personal responsibility for one's faith and one's religion. So, I looked at all of that. Tafsir discourses, as you know, are important in Muslim societies because sometimes, as one important Muslim scholar specialized in tafsir has once said that, sometimes in Muslim societies, ordinary people sort of confuse between a Quranic text and the tafsir. Sometimes people say, well, isn't the Quran said this or that? And they would be thinking of a tafsir. So in popular understanding in Muslim societies, sometimes people confuse it's important, and the importance of the example was that tafsir discourses are very influential in our cultures, right? And most Muslims depend on the tafsir to understand, and that's what sticks in our minds. So it's reflective, but it's also constructive. That's what I have here. So it reflects societies, but it also constructs certain concepts that people, this is the verse that we're dealing with, and I'm going to read it in Arabic and in English. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي فمن يكفر بالطاغوت ويؤمن بالله فقد استمسك بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله سميع عليم. صدق الله العظيم. Of course, there is no coercion in religion. That is the first part that I will be looking at, and the rest of the verse. I'm trying to save time because I know that I have only 45 minutes. So let's start the journey, so to speak.
Excuse me, Prof. Omaima, excuse me. Some of the audience cannot hear your voice clearly. It's a bit too low. Can you?
Do you want me to be slower or
No,
louder?
No. You're louder, please.
Louder, okay.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, although I have it, okay, I'll try to, maybe come close to the mic of my laptop. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. We will begin with the first formal exegete in the history of Quranic tafsir, which is, of course, Al-Tabari, all the way back to the 10th century. He's sort of the first founder of the official tafsir as a science, right? Now, let's see how he begins dealing with that verse. He's the one who gives us first the historical occasion for the revelation of this verse, which is very interesting. I didn't know about it when I first worked on the paper, but it's very interesting, the historical background of that verse, or why it was revealed, or to address what situations. There are several historical occasions for it. The most important one and most interesting one, I think, is when there was a Muslim man at the time of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu salam, at the beginning Muslim community, but who had two sons, two grown sons, who remained Christian and did not embrace the new faith, and he was very upset, and he went to the Prophet ﷺ to ask him, how can I leave my two sons who are grown men and wanted to travel to Syria? How do I leave them Christian and I've become a Muslim now? Do I force them? And the Prophet ﷺ told him, no, don't do that. Don't force them to embrace Islam just because you want to. And this is one of the reasons the verse itself was revealed. There are also other narratives that say at that time, pre-Islamic women and mothers would sometimes pledge their first newborn to give them to Jewish mothers to nurse them, for instance, the Jewish community in Medina, right? So these children would grow up in a Jewish household and would become Jewish, and and again, there was a desire to, no, let's have them back and let's force them to become Muslim also. Anyway, so there are very interesting historical context at the time of the early Medinan community that people thought about enforcing the religion on their sons, on their children, and the verse was revealed to forbid that. Now, so this is one issue that we have at the beginning of the tafsir. Of course, after that, the Tabari goes into the issues of, well, but what do we do about the people of the book, Jews and Christians? How do we deal with them if, do they also have, or does this verse also apply to them? This was an issue, but then he said, well, exegetes began to think about that. What is the situation of non-Muslims living with us? And the only thing that they could come up with is, well, as long as they are people of the book, and as long as they pay the poll tax, the jizyah, then sure, that's fine. We do not have the right to coerce them into the religion. Again, the issue of abrogation came up, in 973. The exegetes began to think, what do we do about this other verse? They called it, unfortunately, they called it the sword verse or the fighting verse. What do we do when we have a verse that tells us to fight the idolaters? Tabari made a distinction between enforcing inner faith and establishing a religious system based on a political settlement. In other words, we can have a political settlement with non-Muslims, and they can follow whatever order, social and political order in the society if there's a majority of Muslims. But that's different from coercion. Religious, there has to be religious acceptance and tolerance. That's different from social and political dominance. Now, I want to read a quote from Tabari, which is, that I translated it, which is a very nice quote about that. Because as Professor Hidayat was saying, it's an inner faith that nobody can see in your heart. This is what Tabari says. And God hears the faith of the believer in God alone, the disbeliever in false gods or tyrants. God is all-knowing of a believer's determination and resolve concerning his oneness, as well as the sincerity of his heart. Then he repays each group on Judgment Day according to what every person's tongue has uttered and what he harbored in his conscience. So it's very interesting, despite all the talk about the jizyah for Christians and Jews, or for a social and political dominance, at the very end he says, but still it's a matter of heart and conscience, and only God can know what's in our hearts and conscience. So we just cannot judge, right? Following that, there is Al-Zamakhshari and Al-Razi, two exegetes in the 12th and the 13th century. Now, these are important because now we're going to watch how the discourse on that particular verse gets developed even more, right? Now, Zamakhshari, or Al-Zamakhshari, has a very important contribution and addition to the explanation of La Ikraha fi Din. And again, he has this very succinct statement. God did not base faith on force and coercion, but on enabling and choice. And he actually uses the Arabic word for choice, ikhtiyar. It's very interesting, right? And he's also one of the first exegetes to make a connection, and a very important connection, with another verse, with chapter 10, verse 99, that says, and again, this is a verse that we sort of all know, but we don't make the connection. And had your Lord willed, all those who are on earth would have believed all together. Would you compel people till they become believers? You know, if God had wanted all on the earth, you know, أفتكره الناس حتى يكونوا مؤمنين. Very interesting that he makes that connection with other verses that also corroborate or solidify the idea of freedom of belief, freedom of faith. Al-Razi also, and a century later, so to speak, also develops the argument further and talks about what would be the point of ibtila. You know, this is a world of trial, of affliction, of a test. Why does God give us ibtila? Because this is a test for us as human beings. It's a divine test. So for us to pass the divine test, we have to have volition. Volition, again, means free choice. To be able to deserve, if we choose the right path freely, then we will deserve reward. But, so he makes that logically, compulsion is illegitimate because it contradicts divine obligation, which is taklif, and personal responsibility. And he also makes connection with two more verses that solidify this concept of freedom. So whosoever will, let him believe, and whosoever will, let him disbelieve. And another verse. You know, again, this is very famous. Man sha'a falyu'min wa man sha'a falyakfur. Okay, you want to believe, believe. If you want to disbelieve, disbelieve, right? He talks a little bit about the political and social dimension. Also, another very nice statement on his part. Only God Almighty hears who utters the two shahadas and the one who speaks of disbelief, and knows what pure faith dwells in the believer's heart and what foul belief is in the unbeliever's heart, right? Following exegete Al-Qurtubi, he was from Al-Andalus in the 13th century. Now he adds as a historical narrative, a new narrative that wasn't used before. So I again watch how the discourse develops and solidifies, and how the exegetes try to negotiate this concept, develop it, anyway, I'll tell you that again, this is an anecdote that Qurtubi mentions, very interesting. He says that once it is said Caliph Umar radiallahu anhu met an old Christian lady, and he told her, you know, why don't you believe? Why don't you embrace Islam? You know, and she said, no, I do not want to do that. And Caliph Umar, it is said in the narrative, said, you know, you're right. La ikraha fi din. You know, he sort of revised his position, and he uttered that verse. So it's interesting how he remembered that verse in this situation, right? Anyway, of course, I'm just selecting as examples some of the exegetes or the interpreters or the commentators, as you know, the classical ones. But I notice that as sort of the centuries go by, there's a diminishing interest in the principle of human responsibility and the details of the occasions of revelation. Yani we saw in the earlier examples how these two things were important. You know, people saying, well, we have to have a choice because this is taklif, we're going to be rewarded on our choices. And then the occasion for revelation. You know, as the science of interpretation develops and more, it seems that people, exegetes, don't mention these things anymore, maybe because by now people know them, but you know, by the time there is Al-Baydawi in the 13th century, he doesn't have a contribution, he just gives a brief summary of past interpretations. Al-Suyuti in the 16th century, again, just gives a superficial paraphrase, nothing significant there. But with Ibn Kathir in the 14th century, there's a development, but not a good development, because he adds, he makes cross-references to new verses, but and two hadiths that some people say they are weak, really. But the verses and the hadiths he uses in his arguments sort of emphasizes the necessity of combat, the necessity of fighting, the necessity of aggressive and forceful conversion, which is very strange. He ignores using the verses of free will that we have seen used by Zamakhshari and Razi, and sort of has another attitude, right? More hostile, more. So we notice that, right? There's another interpreter or exegete called Al-Alusi, late. When I say late in the classical era, in the 17th or 19th century, he retrieves the reference to Zamakhshari and Razi's logic again, which is good, right? But doesn't add anything new. This is a very important exegete that is not well known. He's not a famous name, not like Ibn Kathir. But I discovered him by coincidence when I was doing research for this paper. Notice his date, 14th century, which is still in the pre-modern, medieval. His name is Muhammad ibn Ahmad ibn Juzay al-Kalbi al-Gharnati. He's from Al-Andalus. But he makes a very interesting interpretation, understanding of La ikraha fi din, because most of interpreters who wanted to understand how do we have this verse and how do we have other verses that say, do jihad against the unbelievers, how do we incorporate both, or how do we reconcile both? most of the exegetes resorted to the technique of abrogation. You know, he said, well, yes, there is la ikraha fi din, but then all these fighting or sword or jihad verses came to abrogate. Yani, we're not going to work by this idea of freedom. Now, this
Prof. Omaima,
exegete,
excuse me,
yes?
Prof. Omaima, is 5 more minutes okay with you?
I'm sorry. Okay, right. I will try to rush very quickly. Okay, 5 minutes maybe. Thank you.
Sorry.
This exegete Al-Gharnati sort of did the opposite. Yani he said, no, La ikraha fi din was a verse that revealed in Medina after the conquest of Mecca and after the final triumph. So it really abrogates the other verses on qital and jihad because it's already after the triumph of Islam. And he calls this ayah, very interesting, he calls it ayat al-musalama, verse of peacefulness, or ayat al-muwada'a, the verse of gentleness and mildness. You see, very interesting. So no, all these verses on fighting, and these were historical ones before Fath Mecca, before the conquest of Mecca and the triumph of Islam. So it's interesting to use him. You know, he's a legitimate interpreter. It's interesting to use his understanding. If, you know, if someone says, oh, okay, that was at the beginning, now we have to fight and we have to use coercion and aggression, right? No. I know I have probably 3 more minutes, so I'm going to rush through this. The modern exegetes, there is Muhammad Abdu, of course, at the beginning of the 20th century. He did very well in explaining that verse and in trying to explain that whatever we want to call fighting verses or sword verses, these are either historical at the time or only to be applied as a self-defense. As a self-defense, you don't go out there and force people to Islam. Only when Muslims or Muslim societies collectively are exposed to attack, then you defend your religion. But the principle, he called that, this is a quotation, he called that principle of no compulsion in religion is one of Islam's grand rules, as Professor Hidayat was saying, the value of freedom. And this is something that we should be proud of, because at the time of revelation in the 7th century, this was radical. No one on the planet, no human society or civilization at that time believed in freedom or that there's no compulsion. So this is something that we should always emphasize and be proud of, that it is part of our revelation. These are some of the names. I'm not going to go into it. I just want to rush until the end of the slides. These are some names of 20th century figures who wrote books on, and focused very much on that concept of no coercion and on freedom of faith and freedom of religion. Mahmoud Shaltut, who was the rector of Al-Azhar University, Sayyid Qutb, in his interpretation Fi Zilal al-Qur'an, also praised the freedom of belief as something that we should be proud of as Muslims. At-Tahir ibn Ashur is a Tunisian exegete, also did very well, because he said that 256, this verse, came after Ayat al-Kursi. So it's like, if you don't believe, khalas, that's it. No problem. And these are other contemporary Muslim views as well. You can just look at the names very quickly. The first publication is issued by the Higher Council of Islamic Affairs of Egypt, and this is a user-friendly tafsir. It also gives historical background, and it emphasizes that verse as a very primary and important principle in Islam. Khalid Abul Fadl has a very interesting book called The Place of Tolerance in Islam in 2002. Gamal al-Banna is also an Egyptian intellectual. He had a whole book called حرية الاعتقاد في الإسلام, Freedom of Conviction in Islam. حرية الفكر والاعتقاد في الإسلام, another one. And he's the one who gives us a list of people. This is very important, by the way. He gives us a list of names of people who reneged back on their Islam during the time of the Prophet ﷺ in Mecca and Medina. And the Prophet never punished them. They just left the Islam. They were apostates, in other words. They left Islam. And we know their names. And the Prophet never did anything to them, just left them, right? As long as they're not, as we said, hostile, aggressive, this is something else. So I just want to go back to, yeah, this is the conclusion. Let me just read it very quickly and I'll end there. I'm sorry. Classical exegetes, they presented essential core meaning of freedom of belief. They were a little bit challenged by what to do with the jizyah, with the poll tax, with the fighting and jihad verses. They tried to say this is politics, and politics is different from theology, from religion, right? And at that time, the medieval and cultural conception of political dominance was a given. This was before the nation state. There were no nation state, no laws. This was the time of empires, right? So they dealt with it, but they gave us some nice understandings. Of course, at the present time, there's the whole in the age of the nation state, there's the whole problem of present apostasy and blasphemy state laws, right? And other chapters in the book deal with that. But we should always remember the Quranic ethic and fiqhi flexibility about this. This is what we should try to implement, right? Dar al-Ifta al-Masriya, by the way, on its site, on the online site, if you check it, it redefines ridda. It rejects ridda as a cause for apostasy or blasphemy law, and says this is a matter of it's when wali al-amr, when a ruler wages war, when someone wages war against Muslims, and when there's a treason, this is a ruler's legal or official authority. It's not like you go around chasing people to see who is not following Islam or who's not. So this is an important official religious opinion, that ridda is not what we think now anymore, right? There's a quote by Khalid Abul Fadl. I can read it later about this. I think I should end now so that I can give the time for other speakers. Sorry I took long, but thank you very much, and I'll stop here.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Omaima, for your very well delivered presentations. And now it's time for Professor Nina Nurmila to say what she is going to say. Prof. Nina, I can see there are, no, okay. Prof. Nina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm still looking for my PowerPoint, which I would like to present. Hope this is the correct one. I prepare a very long PowerPoint, but I will stop when you tell me that the time is over. Okay, I will do this. Yeah, I think this one. While I'm preparing for the PowerPoint, I would like to thank Professor Komaruddin Hidayat. I think by participating in urban Sufism, I'm forced to read new books. And this is good for me in between my very busy time. I finally finished the reading the new book. Yeah. So the book is the translation of the English version, which was published in 2021. And I would like to appreciate Mizan for quickly translating the book into Indonesian, in 2023. So it's like after 2 years, So I would before I comment on or tell the content of the book, I would like to tell the content of the book as the overview of the book. But I really after reading the whole book, I really appreciate the editors, the writers of these books for making the organization of the books very logical. Well, I'll come to that sequencing. And this book begin with the introduction from the editors. And what attracted me very well is the case of Asia Bibi. Even though the book was not going through the detail of the case of Asia Bibi, so I found out from other sources about what happened to Asia Bibi. Asia Bibi is a Punjabi farm worker who was accused of blaspheming against the Prophet Muhammad after a quarrel with Muslim fellow villagers. So the quarrel took place because during the working hours, Asia Bibi drank from the glass that usually the Muslim fellow villagers use. And the Muslim villagers were objected to what Asia Bibi did by drinking from the same glass, because the Muslim villagers regard that the glass used to drink by non-Muslim to be unclean, so they cannot use anymore the glass used by Asia Bibi. In order they can use that glass, they asked Asia Bibi to convert to Islam, but Asia Bibi rejected to convert to Islam, and there was a quarrel, and then Asia Bibi was accused of blaspheming against the Prophet. And because of this, there is a long mystery of Asia Bibi. There was an angry mass who beat Asia Bibi in her house, and then in 2010, in response to the global outrage, Pakistani court sentenced her to death by hanging. It seems like it's like small case, but it caused long misery of Asia Bibi and the loss of many lives. Like, for example, in response to Asia Bibi case, a governor of Punjab province, Salman Taseer, called for, I cannot see the, for her pardon. And this caused Salman Taseer to be killed. And then Taseer's son also was kidnapped. Because of defending Asia Bibi. And the person or the bodyguard who killed Taseer, well, finally was being executed for murder. But then he was regarded as a martyr, and the mosque was built up under his name. And another life is a federal minister, Shahbaz Bhatti, was also murdered for his opposition to the blasphemy laws. And after years in prisons, because she was not hanged yet, but put in the prison, and Asia Bibi finally won out an appeal because there was no clear evidence, real evidence that Asia Bibi has been insulting the Prophet. And he was finally released, and for her safety, she had to leave the country, and she left the Pakistan. Now she is in Canada. She left Pakistan on May 7th, 2019. So this is the introduction of the book, and there are many other examples of the cases of the Muslim who was accused of being apostate, yeah, like Nasser Habib Abu Zaid. He is a scholar, academician in Egypt, and due to the judgment that he is an apostate, that his marriage was nullified by the court because of his scholarly work on the Quran, and then he and his wife had to flee to the Netherlands, yeah. And also it is mentioned about Ahok case in Jakarta governor election, and then the controversy of the cartoons, yeah, in the Danish newspaper, and also the Ayatollah Khomeini's 1989 death sentence against Salman Rushdie for the novel of satanic verses. So I would like to give overview of the content of the chapters. The chapter is in the book is divided into three: historical construction, present practices, and new direction. So this is the content of the book in English. Well, I would like to tell some of the contents. The first is the chapter, yeah. The first chapter by Abdullah Said. Well, he is my supervisor when I was doing my PhD in the University of Melbourne. He write the chapter under the title Blasphemy Laws in Islam Toward Right Thinking. So here in this chapter, Abdullah Said argues that death sentence for religious blasphemy has no textual basis in the Quran and Hadith. And this argument also being mentioned by in the last chapter by Mohsen Khadifar, yeah. Therefore, Abdullah Said called for evaluation of the concept of blasphemy in our own context, yeah, because there is a difference between like ridah at the time of like the classical situation and in the current context. And a harsh punishment for religious blasphemy, according to Said, was due to extreme glorification of the Prophet Muhammad, for example, written by Ibn Taymiyyah and Qadi Iyad. And these books written by Ibn Taymiyyah and Qadi Iyad is being examined in the chapters, chapter 3 and 4 by Nora Egan and Muhammad Khalid Mas'ud. So I like the organization of the chapter in which Abdullah Said's argument being reinforced in the following chapters and being wrapped up by Mohsen Khadifar, which re-emphasize Said's arguments that death penalty for religious blasphemy has no textual basis in the Quran and Hadith, and I will mention later. So I will go to second chapter, which has been explained by Professor Omaima just now. That I just want to re-emphasize what she presented. That the chapter presents a classical modern exegesis and the opinion of contemporary Muslim scholars on freedom of religions. And then she argues that laws on apostasy and religious blasphemy, which are assumed to be based on religion and Sharia, are just a product of historical development of politicization and a departure from the universal principle of the freedom of conscience and belief, especially since there is no Quranic legal punishment for living Islam. Yeah, so this is like re-emphasized. She re-emphasized the argument forwarded by Abdullah Said also. Yeah. And in support of her argument, which she just explained, among others, she quoted Abul Fadl. So I think I like to put the quote here. It is ought to be admitted that the Islamic law of apostasy, which punishes a conversion out of faith by death, is a major failure and even a betrayal of the Quranic teachings. So I like this argument that he criticized the misreading of the Quran. Yeah. to justify death punishment for religious blasphemy and apostasy. And I move to chapter 3, and I go to the details, in this chapter 3 and 4, because I think it is these two books which has been very influential and being used by many Islamist groups to justify their act of violence, for example, or like what happened in Indonesia also, like in the case of Ahok 212, and now I can understand the root of like Front Pembela Islam Indonesia (FPI). I think they are following Ibnu Taimiyah. Yeah. So I will and Ibnu Taimiyah quote a lot from Qodiyad's Ashifa. Yeah. So we'll begin with Ashifa first, written by Qodiyad. And I would like, so Ashifa, this is the book that Ibnu Taimiyah also referred to, was written by Qadi Iyad. He passed away in 1149, so it is in the 12th century, and he is one of the Maliki scholars. And he became a Qadi in a judge, in the 12th century in Granada, and because of a political situation, he was fired, but reappointed again as a Qadi in Ceuta in a different place in 1145. And then he became the de facto leader in I don't know how to pronounce Ceuta for some time. And then he was being exiled, and 2 years later, he died in a destitute. Ashifa was the most popular books, among the books that Qadi Iyad wrote on fiqh, hadith, science of hadith, and dictionary. And this book also cited by many famous early scholars, such as Ibn Taymiyyah, Taqiyuddin al-Subki. I have mentioned that earlier. And this book was spread, in Spain, and referred to in the polemic about Muslim-Christian relations and on the development of Maulid as a form of glorification of the Prophet, So Maulid is being, initiated in a certain context to glorify the Prophet Muhammad, After the first printing in 1847 in Egypt, Ashifa has been translated into English, Urdu, French, Spanish, which show that the book has been very influential, And the content of the book Ashifa is about the life story of the Prophet, in which Qadi Iyad glorifies him and call for the protection of the Prophet's heritage, And this glorification of the Prophet based on a scholarly discourse of the traditional ulama, whose authority was evoked and argued by even advocated, So the book has the interest because of maintaining the authority of the traditional ulama scholarship. And the author, Egan, assumed that this book was written to build on intellectual Sunni bulwark against what he perceived as a dangerous process. So I have mentioned that. Okay, so to safeguard the integrity of the Prophet, this book gives harsh punishment, including death penalty for those who insult the Prophet. So this is, I think, what I see the root problem of the construction or making the classical construction of making death penalty for apostasy and religious blasphemy is actually began from this book, Ashifa. And then Ashifa was being quoted also by Ibn Taymiyyah, who is very popular in the current era, So I would like to introduce Ibn Taymiyyah, who belonged to a well-known family of Hanbali scholars in Haran, a city in Turkey. And he was 6 years old when a Mongol attack on the native town forced his family to migrate to Damascus, in Syria, where he completed his education, and then he teach there, And in 1293, he wrote Manasikul Hajj, the book in which he denounced a certain Hajj ritual as heretic innovation or bid'ah, and other books, Hambali critical theological response to his opponents, especially to the Orthodox Ash'arism, and Al-Wasatiyah. So in 1305, he personally led violent physical attacks on Sufi shrines and orders. So while Qadi Iyad was not mentioned of having a violence act, Ibn Taymiyyah moved further to the violent attack, a physical attack, And because of this, he faced a series of trials in Damascus and Cairo, and he was repeatedly imprisoned in the citadel in Cairo, so for many years. And it was in this context also that his book, As-Sarimul Maslul, was written, and he died in the prison in 1328. So I just know that his biography described Ibnu Taymiyyah to have very radical views, aggressive style, and sharp tongue. Therefore, he has more enemies than friends. And even his students, Samsuddin Ad-Dahabi, advised his teacher, Ibnu Taymiyyah, to give up his pride, his vanity, and his pretensions and his love for publicity. Jadi dia tuh senang sekali supaya terkenal gitu ya. Ibnu Taimiyah is famous in this modern time. Ya, siapa sih yang tidak kenal Ibnu Taimiyah? Kita sering mendengarnya gitu ya. But he's famous in this modern time actually in contradiction to his marginality in pre-modern period. So the author considered this Ibn Taymiyyah to be marginal. Again, here is the context of writing As-Sarimul Maslul that make Ibn Taymiyyah have to be imprisoned. So the case was began in 4th July 1293, where a large group of people from Suwaida came to Damascus to report that a Christian secretary of the Amir Asaf insulted the Prophet Muhammad. The deputy governor who heard this accusation ignored the complaint, because he respected his friend Amir Asaf. But the next day, a group of ulama and others, led by Ibn Taymiyyah and Shah Zainuddin Al-Fariki, came to speak to the deputy governor about this matter. He assured that the group that he would summon the Christian and deal with him in accordance with the Sharia. So this ulama want to punish the Christian secretary. Based on,
Mbak Nina, 5 more minutes, okay with you?
Okay. So basically, these two books has become like the sources of reference, the reference to give a punishment, to religious blasphemy and apostasy. But as I mentioned by Abdullah Said, and which is supported again by the last author in the book, because I think our forum today is to encourage people to read themselves, to the books, and the book has already being translated into Indonesian, so let's make it easy. Khalid Mas'ud also highlight the weaknesses of Ibn Taymiyyah's book, that he sometimes refer to Hanafi, which is different from Hanafi school opinion about the capital punishment. In Ibn Taymiyyah, he didn't give room for repentance, when actually Hanafi school give a chance for 3 days for someone who insult the Prophet to repent. And Khalid Mas'ud, the writer of this chapter, also like Professor Omaima said that this kind of punishment is more likely like political, yeah. And because of this book, which being referred to also in Iran, there is in the laws, blasphemy and apostasy are regarded as a serious crime. And there is a cases, for example, Ruhullah Tafana, who was also being charged by being hanged for that when he was young, he made a video, but the video was made in a very stressful situation, but the judge ignored the situation that Ruhullah was in a stressful situation. Yeah, and we can imagine the misery of Ruhullah Tafana, who is being sentenced to death just because of the video that his friend took from his computer, and now he has been like miserable in the jail for a long time. Yeah. Well, I need to finish my presentation by mentioning again the Quranic verse, which has I mean, actually, like what is being mentioned by Prof. Komaruddin Hidayat in the introduction, la ikraha fiddin, ya, qad tabayyana rusdu minal ghayy. So I think Islam is very tolerant. Islam gives the explanation. So this is what Islam is. You believe it or you don't believe it, it's up to you. Yeah, and there is no physical punishment whatsoever. Yeah, in the Quran. Yeah. So this verse is re-emphasized again in the next verse. Walau syaa rabbuka la amana man fil ardi kulluhum jami'an. So if God wills, so all who are in this earth will believe in Him, but that's not happen. So we really need to respect diversity, yeah, and be tolerant, because people just need to be responsible for what they do after we explain everything. Yeah. I think that's all, Mbak Fifi. Thank you very much. But this book is very interesting if you read well from chapter to chapter. So I really recommend to read the book. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih banyak Mbak Nina. Mbak Nina, thank you so very much, Professor Nina. This very thorough and enlightening presentations. And then once again, I will say thank you to Professor Omaima for her very well delivered presentation. Truly appreciate it. And now I see that there are several participants who already raised their hands. And now I think it's about time to get into the Q&A session, ya, Mbak Nina and Professor Omaima. Okay, Mas Komar, is it okay?
Yes,
It's
I'm
okay.
ready for
I'll be a good listener.
Okay, fine. I see that there is the Furkanul Hakim. Mas Furkanul, would you see? I cannot see your face. Would you start your video?
I'm sorry because the connection is not good here, so I have to turn off my videos. Am I audible?
Yes. Now it's time for you to ask your questions. Where are you? Are you in Jakarta or?
I am in Depok. I am the students of Faculty of Educations, PhD. Okay. Thank you very much for very interesting discussions. To be honest, this is new things for me to talk about the freedom of religions, and I've also heard about the religion blasphemy. It's really interesting to discuss about this and getting the reflections from the speakers tonight. I just want to know more about the readings or the chapters of the book, especially the critics toward the ideas of the existence of blasphemy law currently. Does the book or the chapter also discuss about whether or not the existence of blasphemy law currently is, or even in the past time ago, is backlashing with the idea of freedom of religions in Islamic views. Am I clear?
Yes.
I think that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Okay. Now is Mbak Nina or Prof. Omaima will answer the question.
Yeah, Prof.
I think
Omaima.
Nina could respond because she has a good overview of the book.
Okay, okay.
Nina, mohon.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think the existing blasphemy laws, I can say it is a backlashing of the freedom of religion, like what you said, because like for example in Pakistan and in Iran, even though they have like secular laws, but the secular laws is unclear. So this give opportunity to judge to refer back to the books like the two books that I mentioned. And then when they refer to the two books, which like it's really encouraging for corporeal punishment, like the death penalty, yeah. So that's make the judge tend to punish like in Ruhullah Tafana in in Iran, yeah, for the mystic that he already repent, yeah. And here one of the authors says that death penalty is very harsh punishment. It is against human's right and can only if it is being applied, the process of the laws should be like very tough, yeah. And the important thing is that this harsh punishment has no basis in the Quran. So the last author actually, who is from, I think it's okay, Muhsen Kadifar, yeah, he has analyzed that okay, in the Quran there is none, yeah, no corporeal punishment, yeah, for the blasphemy and apostasy. In the hadith, yes, there is hadith, but the hadith is not reliable. It's not mutawatir. Therefore, the book is actually encouraged to to live, no more corporeal punishment, yeah, for the murtad, yeah, for the ridah, because the concept of ridah in the classical era when Muslim were fighting against non-Muslim is different from the current context when people, for example, after being Christian and then learning Islam, move to Islam, or when someone has become Muslim but more interested in other religion and then move without any hatred or purpose of betraying Muslim. So that's the different concept of the ridah or apostasy being discussed in the book. I hope that can answer your question. Thank you for
Thank you, Prof.
Okay,
Thank
we'll
you.
see the class.
Thank you, Mbak Nina.
See you, Prof.
Is there any more that you want to add, Professor Omaima?
No, I think Nina presented it very well. The difference between the pre-modern and modern nation state, as we said, the fact that I said it in my presentation and Nina said it in her presentation, the fact that there is no had, right, in Sharia or in the Quran for someone, leaving Islam. And there's a difference between, if someone just quietly leaves Islam or stops believing in Islam, fine, that's his problem. But there's a difference between that and a collective, aggressive, public treason or betrayal. That's a different issue, and that's what happened in the pre-modern understanding of Ridda or the Ridda wars by Caliph Abu Bakr. That was historical and political, not about inner faith. So Yeah, so thank you, Nina, again for summing up these points.
Yes, thank you, Mbak Nina. I agree with you, Professor Omaima. There is more questions here from Pak Arjo. Actually, he addressed it to all speakers, but I will ask it to Professor Omaima. With ever increasing number of non-practicing Muslims, is it considered among scholars as threats or as threat to society? Okay, I say it once again. With ever increasing number of non-practicing Muslims, is it considered among scholars as threats to society or not?
Yes, this is a very interesting question. Now we're talking about non-practicing Muslims or perhaps secular Muslims sometimes with, they're called that way. Again, the idea of being a threat, no, they're being only a threat to, I wouldn't use the word threat, but I would use maybe they have a bad influence in society if they take the position of promoting, being against Islam. We've been saying, as the topic of this talk, we've been talking about freedom of belief, of faith, of ideas, of thoughts, of political stands, and we want to differentiate between, again, as I was just saying, in your hearts, not believing in Islam, not practicing Islam, not doing salat, not doing siyam, not fasting. Nobody can force you to do that. Nobody can force you to do salah if you don't want it. I mean, God will take care of you later. Or nobody can force you to do siyam if you don't want to. But then there's a concept in Islam that's called isha'at al-fahisha. Don't go around promoting your non-Muslimness as a form of aggressiveness. Don't be aggressive. Don't be public. Just out of respect for society, even non-Muslim societies, by the way, I mean, whatever, Western, European, I mean, they have norms, they have cultural norms, not religious norms maybe, but every society on this planet, religious or not, Muslim or not, secular or not, has its own cultural and social norms that have to be respected somehow. There's a boundary, and it doesn't interfere with your own with the freedom, with personal freedom. But then again, you don't want your personal freedom to also to provoke collective freedom. So just one more thing about being a threat. If you can overcome that, if you don't like non-practicing Muslims or secular Muslims, you can overcome that by more culture, by more education, by promoting better understanding of Islam, maybe to attract people more, or to attract non-practicing Muslims back to practicing Muslims, just like this book, just like this session that we're doing.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much, Professor Omaima. Pak Ajo, hopefully that will answer your questions. And before we move to another participant, I see that Adi already raised his hand and put his notes on the chat room. Adi, would you ask your questions?
Pak Bagus Pangestu.
Pak Bagus first, I think.
Maybe.
Pak Bagus
Pak
Pangestu.
Bagus.
Okay,
Bagus Pangestu.
Monggo, Pak Bagus.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. It's really nice meeting everyone here. It's new to me. However, I'm quite a huge fan of Professor Komaruddin Hidayat because he's one of the founder in Madania. I used to work in Madania as an English teacher. It's really nice to see you, Professor.
Thank you.
Alhamdulillah. Actually, I got two questions for Professor Komaruddin and also Professor Nina. I would like to ask you, Prof. Back to us as a Muslim, what is the limit of us to embrace Islam or to invite others to our beliefs? As we know that in Islamic belief, um, if we care to our brothers, sisters, we invite them to Islam. And how to do that? I mean, how to not force them? Because, of course, we know in Madania we have Jehovah Witnesses even acknowledged to us in Madania. So, what is the limit? That's the question for our Professor Komaruddin Hidayat. And for Prof. Nina, can you please remind us again of the Ahok case? What happened at that time? Why was he in prison at that time? I mean, in which blasphemy or in which case that made him in prison? Thank you so much. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Bagus. Mas Komar or Mbak Dina will answer first.
Oh, all right.
Komar
Thank you
dulu.
very much.
Gimana?
Well, in Islam, we have a term dakwah. Dakwah means invitation. You just imagine you have wedding ceremony. You invite your friend to come to your party, wedding ceremony. I think you have to do is treat them warmly, politely, and you serve many things that make him good and having good impression. And well, anyway, it will give a wonderful time, memorable time because of this invitation. Just imagine when you invite the people, the invitee come to this party, then you get angry to them. Okay, what will happen to them? This is the meaning of dakwah, of invitation. So whenever you invite the people to Muslim home, to Islamic home, to Islamic society, I think one thing that you have to show that you are a good host, you are admirable host, you treat them warmly, hospitality, that they will sympathetic to you. That Islam. That's why in Islam, in Quran, there are many words, many suggestions that please do good, treat them the best you can do for them, not by force, but by example, to be a good example for them. I think that the very message of the invitation, just imagine dakwah mean invitation. What will you do when you invite people to come to your house? Thank you.
Okay, baik. Thank you very much, Mas Komar. And now Mbak Nina, maybe about the Ahok case.
Ya, saya lupa itu kasusnya Ahok. Udah lama sekali ya itu yang penggunaan surat
Karena
Al-Maidah.
Mbak Dina, mungkin kita bisa saling mengingatkan waktu itu Pak Ahok
Iya,
didakwa.
Al-Maidah ayat 51. I really forget about that. But this is about I think it's Ahok mentioned about surat Al-Maidah 51 here, which was then being videoed, but it is being like cut, yeah, and then to make it like he misused religion or insulting or misuse the Quranic verses. But after many years of that, I see that that's only very political, yeah, very political. The use of religion in order to defeat competitors of the politic, yeah. And like in the book, the victims can be Muslim themselves or the religious minority. In the case of Ahok is Christian and he is Chinese, yeah. So he was a victim of was that like fitnah. And finally, I remember that the person who spread the video was also being charged, yeah. So there was a mistake, but it was a politicization in order to defeat Ahok in the governor election, I think. And actually, I'm more interested in responding to your first question, which has been already answered by Prof. Komaruddin Hidayat, because when you asked that question, I also write the same word, dakwah, yeah, that we can do the invitation, invite people to Islam. And in the concept of Islam, we have also Amar Ma'ruf Nahi Munkar. And usually when someone being invited to do a good thing, they are not angry. Yeah, so they can reject or accept the invitation. But I think the invitation is not only by oral. We can do like using the music, yeah, and then Islamic music, and then we can make ourselves as a model, so people are interested in ourselves. For example, when the Dhuhr time come, we pray, and then that's regularly, and we clean ourselves, and then people around us becoming more interested in learning how Islam is. I think that kind of dakwah is more interesting rather than having very harsh to non-Muslim, yeah, and that's make people like go far away. Thank you.
Thank you
so
very
much,
much,
Prof.
Mbak Lina. We still have one question. We still have time for one more question. Adi, are you still going to ask your question?
Yes. Thank you, Mbak Fifi. Thank you, Omaima and Bu Nina and Pak Komar. My first question is, it's like a common question. My first question is to Omaima, how do you define classical, modern, and contemporary exegetes? What are the criteria? And then the second question is, to the limit of my understanding, Islam is tend to be individualistic religion, but in its development, why have the sect in Islam become like a quote unquote political organization that are fighting for its other followers and power, including in freedom of religion issue? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Adi. Professor Omaima.
I'm going to respond to the first question, but then you have to repeat the second one because I didn't understand it very well. The first question is, thank you. It's a great question because that's exactly one of the goals of the chapter, was to show the development in the nature of the discourse. Now, the classical exegetes, the pre-modern ones, we call them sometimes pre-modern, sometimes pre-colonial, or pre-modern nation state. You know, there were no laws to implement, right? But remember again the historical context up to the 18th or 19th century, all throughout, or even during the Ottoman Empire. Muslims, or the Muslim civilization, was in power, right? So the whole, looking upon non-Muslims or non-Muslim countries as, the Muslims were already in power, already having the confidence of being a political, political world power. So there was no need to feel powerless or disempowered, as we say. That's why, when you look at Muhammad Abdu, because I didn't get a chance to present Muhammad Abdu's discourse on La Ikraha fi Din, you will notice in the modern exegetes, beginning with Muhammad Abdu in the 20th century, there's a tone of, there's a defensive tone, and lack of confidence, little bit, or not lack of confidence, but, with Muhammad Abdu at the height, the beginning of the 20th century, we were in confrontation with colonial powers. The Arab region was under either British or French occupation, actual colonial occupation. This is one thing. A second thing, the literature of Orientalism was aggressive, and there was always not just criticism, but attack of Islam as a religion, Muslims and Africans and Asians, barbarians, backward. Islam is a, backward, barbarian religion, violence, and, oppressing women. So in the tone, the tone of Muhammad Abdu had a defensive tone, trying to prove, no, Islam is good. Islam has, very progressive principles, and there's always that feeling of defending Islam and confronting Western colonial modernity, right? Because modernity came to us, particularly in the Arab region, with colonialism at the same time. So there was always this tension. How do I accept modernity without coloniality, without racism, right? And how do I accept modernity but try to still defend the religion? So that's one difference, for instance. More contemporary ones, towards the end of the 20th century, people like Taha Jaber Alwani, Khalid Abu al-Fadl, Jamal al-Banna, they did very well in trying to do that distinction. Politics is one thing, and the core Quranic ethic of freedom and freedom of religion, this is what we should retrieve in our societies, whether politically or in law, right? Yeah, this. Okay, what was the second question? I didn't understand it very well, Adi.
Okay, my second question, let me repeat again. To the limited of my understanding, Islam is individualistic religion, in the sense that there is a freedom of religion guarantee and personal responsibility for sins. But why in its development, the sect in Islam are fighting each other for its followers and to gain power? What's wrong with that?
Yeah, I see. I think if I understood your point correctly, you want to say that Islam originally is about personal ethics and personal virtues, right? Yes. So why when collectiveness gets into it, when it becomes politicized and ideologized, then all things go wrong. You're right about that. That's why, this is the nature of politics, of course. Politics is about power and power relations, but this is bound to happen. At the same time, you cannot also say that Islam is just internal. Of course, it's about personal virtues, personal ethics. That's the first stage. That's number one. But that also has to reflect socially in society, socially and culturally and publicly. There is such thing as public and civic ethics. But you're very right about not turning it into a power struggle. This is something also that I have looked into. Qur'an, not just about freedom of religion and not just about women, but if you look at the Qur'an as a whole and the revelation and our religion as a whole, it really was revealed to fight power, to fight taghut, to fight inequality in relations of power. So the important thing is not to turn these ethics into just private virtue and not also care about justice in our societies, right? So this would be my answer.
Thank you very much, Professor Omaima. Adi, that hopefully will answer your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Mbak Fifi.
Yes.
Tapi tadi kan tanya itu ya tentang Ahok itu ya. Tadi kan saya belum sempat ya agak apa namanya udah agak lupa gitu ya kasusnya. Jadi itu kan Ahok itu ketika berkunjung ke Pulau Seribu ya, ke Pulau Pramuka, saya juga nggak tahu kenapa kok Ahok bisa tahu surat Al-Maidah ayat 51 ya. Ya mungkin karena memang waktu itu mau menghadapi itu ya apa namanya governor election. Jadi saya sebutkan dulu bunyi surat Al-Maidah ayat 51 ya. Ya ayyuhalladzina amanu la tattakhidul yahuda wan nasara auliya'a. Jadi wahai orang-orang yang beriman, jangan engkau mengambil orang Yahudi dan Nasara itu sebagai pemimpin gitu ya. Ba'duhum auliya'u ba'din. Jadi jangan sampai menjadi pemimpin. Nah, kemudian ya mungkin ya Ahok mungkin dia belajar ya, meskipun dia tahu potensi-potensi yang membuat dirinya kemungkinan tidak terpilih itu karena umat Muslim berpegang kepada ayat ini gitu. Eh, dan saya melihat di berita itu kayak begini nih kutipan Ahok yang mengatakan itu seperti ini. Jadi jangan percaya sama orang, kan bisa saja dalam hati Bapak Ibu nggak bisa pilih saya kan ya, dibohongi pakai surat Al-Maidah 51 macam-macam, itu hak Bapak Ibu ya. Dan karena perkataan ini, jadi kalau Bapak Ibu perasaan nggak bisa kepilih nih karena saya takut masuk neraka karena dibohongin gitu ya, nggak apa-apa. Jadi seolah-olah dia secara psikologis itu dia sadar diri bahwa dirinya itu adalah minoritas, bukan seorang Muslim, sementara ya Nasrani kan, la tatahil Yahudu wan Nasoro gitu. Jadi sehingga kemudian dia menggunakan, dia tahu itu sebagai penghalangnya gitu. Tapi karena dia mengatakan itu, kemudian itu dianggap sebagai penistaan agama, dan kemudian videonya itu sebetulnya dipotong gitu. eh, jadi mungkin ada kata yang di-highlight ya, sehingga kemudian dia dituduh sebagai penista agama dan kemudian dipenjara kan. Tapi setelah lama di penjara, kemudian yang siapa namanya Yani atau siapa gitu ya, itu kemudian justru dinyatakan bersalah karena penyebaran video yang diedit gitu, seperti itu. Eh, Ya itu aja sih, semoga tidak puas gitu. Sudah lama
Iya,
sekali, maaf saya harus membaca kembali. Terima kasih Mbak
baik.
Fifi.
Ya, terima kasih banyak Prof. Nina atas penjelasannya. Rekan-rekan semua yang saya hormati, tak terasa kita sudah berada di penghujung diskusi kita pada malam hari ini. Semoga apa yang disampaikan oleh para narasumber dan juga jawaban atas pertanyaan yang disampaikan dapat menjawab paling tidak sebagian dari pertanyaan dan kegelisahan kita. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now at the end of our discussions. I, on behalf of Caknurian Urban Sufism team, truly appreciate and grateful for all the support and presence of all the participants, and most graciously for all the speakers. We hope that this discussion could humbly answer some of your questions that may arise accordingly. And before we end this discussion, I once again would like to ask Professor Dr. Komaruddin Hidayat to deliver his conclusion remarks. Mas Komar, monggo.
Oke, thank you Prof. Omaima dan Prof. Nina. Allow me to summarize briefly bahwa dalam Islam itu kemerdekaan, kebebasan itu anugerah Tuhan yang sangat mendasar. Dan saya senang ya bahwa ayat tadi la ikraha fiddin itu turun justru pasca Fathu Makkah. Jadi di puncak kejayaan bahwa mendekati akhir misi kerasulan itu diucapkan. Artinya apa? Bahwa Nabi mempertegas. Kalau dulu terjadi banyak perang-perang itu karena kondisional sekali. Tapi pada akhirnya at the end of the day itu Nabi mengatakan la ikraha fiddin, enggak ada paksaan. Mengapa? Karena kalau beragama kok terpaksa itu kan contradiction in terminus. Mosok berislam, Islam itu kan submit to God voluntarily. Voluntarily, it should be based on freedom. Jadi la ikroha, maka kalau paksaan, berislam kok dipaksa, itu ya it doesn't make sense. Gitu. Jadi ya harus sukarela. Gitu. Nah kedua, bahwa kalau tidak ada kemerdekaan, maka kemudian nggak ada pertimbangan bagi seorang judge hakim untuk memutus baik atau buruk. Jadi surga neraka itu kan ada karena pertimbangan manusia itu milih jalan baik buruk. Kalau tidak ada kebebasan, maka kemudian orang masuk neraka dan surga, apa pertimbangannya dalam proses peradilan, itu kan jadi absurd. Oleh karena itu freedom is a must. Whether someone will put in the hell or will enter paradise, all of those should be based on freedom. Gitu. Termasuk hidup ini, makanya kalau anak kecil, rufi al-qalam, Tuhan itu nggak akan menilai seseorang apapun bebas dari hukum, apa anak kecil, orang tidur atau orang gila. Jadi kalau orang tiga itu, maka hukum nggak berlaku. Karena apa? Nggak ada kesadaran. They have no any consciousness to choose to implement their freedom. Gitu. Jadi terima kasih semuanya. Thank you everyone. Thank you a lot. Thank you a lot, Prof. Omaima. Again, thank you very
Oh,
much.
thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure. Ramadan Mubarak.
Ya,
Thank you
Mubarak.
Mas, thank you so very much, Mas Komar. Terima kasih banyak Profesor Omaima Abou-Bakr, Profesor Nina Nurmila, dan tentunya Mas Komaruddin Hidayat, dan semua yang sudah hadir pada malam hari ini. Diskusi malam ini tidak bermaksud untuk menggurui, semata untuk membuka wacana bagi kita agar dapat menambah pemahaman kita mengenai topik pada malam hari ini. Kita akan bertemu lagi dalam diskusi urban Sufism bersama Komaruddin Hidayat selanjutnya. Jangan lupa selalu pantau e-poster diskusi kami di sosial media. Selamat Hari Perempuan Internasional untuk semua perempuan yang hadir pada malam hari ini. Karena malam hari ini merupakan Hari Perempuan Internasional. Dan acara hari ini, Mas, didukung oleh Mizan.
Oke,
Tapi kita
thank you.
tidak mengalami penjualan buku Mizan, kita tidak melayani penjualan buku Mizan ya Mas ya. Silakan kontak dengan Mizan yang ada di Zoom ini untuk bisa membeli bukunya. Dan terakhir saya Premita Fifi dari Kisah Perempuan Indonesia mengucapkan terima kasih banyak. Dan dengan mengucapkan Alhamdulillah kita tutup diskusi pada malam hari ini. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih semuanya.
Sama.
Selamat
Ya.
Ramadan ya, Mr. Komar.
Ya, buku
Iya.